Alright, so how are you guys? My name is Ahmed Labib, and today I'm going to be telling you about stereotypes and how they arise. And before we start, I just want to get a case study going. So assume that the Arab Association at MAG decide to bring in these Arab speakers for a talk. And so you, being the curious student that you are, decide to go, and so you sit down and everything's going fine. But then you notice something. You notice that one of the Arab speakers is speaking to his friends in what seems to be an aggressive and angry manner. And so you're sitting there thinking to yourself, wow, Arabs are really aggressive people. And then the question that we're going to be asking today is, how did we get to this point? And the first step is illusory correlation. And illusory correlation says, look, when you see a distinct person do a distinct event or distinct behavior, you're going to assume that the two happen together. And so in this case, we have our Arab, someone who you're not as familiar with. It's a novel culture, they dress differently, so to you, they're very distinct, doing a distinct behavior. And here, it's getting angry. We don't see this in our everyday day-to-day life. It's something that doesn't usually happen. And so you put one and one together and you say that this guy is angry because he's Arab, and that an Arab is an angry person. But then the question is, how did we go from here is one angry Arab to all Arabs are angry? And the answer to that is outgroup homogeneity. And outgroup homogeneity says, look, there is us and there is them. And we are all unique. We are all different. And so when one of us does something bad, we say, he is the exception to the rule. He's just on the side. We're not all like that because we are all different. Don't generalize. But then there's them. And they are all the same. They look the same, they dress the same, and so when one of them does something bad, we say that they all do it. It only makes sense. And we're just getting started, because now we have our generalization, and now we have our misconception. But we also have to maintain that stereotype. And that happens through one, confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is this bias that we have of only looking at things that confirm our stereotype and dismiss things that don't. So say after an hour or two of the lectures, everyone goes outside for a coffee break. And so you see all the Arab speakers sitting together. Now, if you were to look at this from an objective point of view, you would say, all right, look, out of the 4 people, 3 of them are these seemingly normal, approachable people. And only one person is this angry, aggressive person. So my stereotype is not true, because out of the 4 people, it's only one person who's like that. But you're not looking at it through that lens. You're looking at it through the confirmation bias lens. And that would look something like this, where you would only focus your attention on that one Arab. And you say, aha, I knew it. I said that Arabs are all angry, and here is my proof, an angry Arab. But this is one way of maintaining the stereotypes, because we also have cognitive biases. And the first of these biases is the encoding bias. And the encoding bias says that when you're looking at the characteristics of that culture, you're going to encode the things that fit your stereotype, but not the ones that don't. So you go back into the lecture and you're given this brochure about all the characteristics that an Arab might have. And some of them are good, some of them are more on the negative scale, some can be related to an angry person, and some are don't, just like any other culture. But that's not what you're encoding into memory. This is what you're encoding into memory. All of the bad things and 1 or 2 of the good things. And you can see how this is problematic, because now every single time you think about that culture, this is all that comes to mind. Why? Well, because that's all you have in your memory. But there's an even scarier bias, and that's the retrieval bias. And the retrieval bias says not only are we selectively encoding the information, we're also selectively retrieving it from memory. And the scary things about retrieval bias is that it works even if the stereotype happened after you encoded the information. And so, say for example, you have your roommate who comes in 5 minutes late to the lecture. So he misses the whole angry person thing. So, he watches the whole lecture, everything's going fine, and he walks out thinking, wow, Arabs are these relatively normal people. I'm glad I came here. But then you come and you say, hey, listen, did you know about the stereotype? And if you're keeping up, at this point, he encoded all of the information because he had no bias. But then when he goes home and he thinks about it again, guess what he's going to remember? The bias, the stereotype. And that's how persistent stereotypes are. Once they happen, they stick there because of all the biases that are protecting them. So you have to invest even more cognitive energy to remove that bias and to remove that stereotype. And I would just like to conclude with one very important idea, and that is that you might be saying, well, here is this guy who's telling me how to use psychology for bad, so psychology is evil. but it's not. Psychology tells you things the way they are. So they tell you here's how things happen, and that's it. They're neutral. How you choose to use that information, and more importantly, how you choose to be affected by that information, that is the difference between good and bad. That is the difference between a good stereotype and a bad one. Thank you.